JX added a brand new aspect, Vampyrism, replacing the old Vampyrism Aura. It also does not stack with Darkness, so today we're gonna find out which one is actually better for the ranged combat style. I'm Wings of Absurdity, a ranged content creator. Let's find out. So how do you actually activate the aspects? Darkness comes from an incantation, so all you need is a nexus to use it. On the other hand, the aspect of vampirism requires you to be on the ancient spellbook. As someone who camps the lunar spellbook for Disruption Shield and Vengeance, I find this incredibly annoying. Now, I need to carry a rune pouch with fire and soul runes just to spellbook swap into ancients and activate it. Before deciding which one is better, let's actually compare how they work. Darkness gives you a 20% dodge chance. That minion that was about to hit you for 1.5k damage, gone, completely dodged. The aspect of vampirism, on the other hand, gives you healing, but the healing is capped at 50 life points per hit slot. This does interact with bleeds, but ranged only has one relevant bleed, and that's Corruption Shot, which is also something you don't even use that often. You might think range benefits a lot from multiple hit splats through abilities like Greater Ricochet or Deadshot, but when you actually do the math, the healing isn't that crazy. Now, if you're hitting multiple targets, Vampirism becomes significantly better. In those situations, on paper, it should outperform Darkness, right? But in a typical scenario, you're essentially comparing healing of 400 life points versus potentially avoiding a 1.5k hit entirely. And it's not just one enemy. Imagine multiple minions, each capable of hitting that hard. At that point, having a chance to dodge multiple hits starts to sound a lot more valuable. Of course, that's all on paper, so let's see how this actually performs in practice. Where's a place I take so much damage at? That's right, Hardboard Vorkath. Again, how many more times am I gonna test things here? Historically, I've always used Darkness and Hardboard Vorkath. For my experience, especially during my experience on leagues, not having Darkness makes me take significantly more damage simply because there's so many things hitting you at once. I tried a regular kill using Vampirism, and surprisingly, I actually got a PR. My survivability felt slightly better in terms of sustain, but not enough to replace Saradomin or Guthix Bow for surviving Phase 3. There's also the question of using Eldritch Crossbow at Vorkath for extra DPS. With how I normally do Vorkath, bring ECB is basically asking to get sent to Death's office even with Darkness. So does Vampirism solve the problem? Absolutely not. I still get slapped. What about pairing Vampirism with Masteric Bow? Still no. Not only does it not do enough to fix the survivability issue, but it also loses out on both the Last Guardian damage and Adrenaline from Perfect Equilibrium during Imbue Shadow. Even without using ECB, it's still rough about half the time with Vampirism. I still need Saradomin and Guthix Bow in Phase 3, and I don't even kill it faster, so what's the point of ECB? So unfortunately, Vampirism isn't enough to make ECB viable at Vorkath, at least for me. Overall, I found Darkness and Vampirism to perform about the same here. At Solak, Darkness actually does nothing against Solak's melee autos since they have a 100% hit chance, so in this case, Vampirism aspect is simply better. The healing itself isn't game-changing. I still need Saradomin and Guthix Bow, but the free healing is still free healing. Because of that, I was able to swap out Hellhound with Ripper Demon and ended up getting a solo PR of 518 compared to my previous 531. Raksha is a boss with slower attacks but higher damage. I found Vampirism here to be slightly helpful. It was just enough to solve the issue of hovering being in near-death situations when I was going for the Grandmaster timer, which I eventually obtained without any pre-build or stalling. I still take a lot of damage at this boss, but that small consistent healing helped, especially in situations where I don't want to use darkness in order to take advantage of the divert ability. At Hard Suck, you would think Vampyrism shines because of how many targets you can possibly hit. For example, if you hit 5 enemies with Deadshot, that should be around 40 hits, so in theory, about 2000 healing, right? Right? But in practice, losing darkness hurts a lot. I initially tried without using the Obsidian helmet, but I ended up signing, and then I signed again. Even after putting the helmet back on, I was still getting slapped around like a bug. Yes, the big healing moments from Vampyrism feels great when they happen, but the downtime between those moments just made it felt worse overall. I felt like I was taking more damage than I could recover. I also wasn't using my Crystal Shield or Relentless Perfume, so that may have had some impact, but overall, I think I still prefer Darkness and Hard Suck. If I really need those healing during those big AoE moments, I'd rather just take the time to switch to Split. So what's the verdict? Since Vampyrism doesn't stack with Darkness, which one should you use? If you're fighting something like Solak, where Darkness doesn't work, then Vampyrism is clearly the better choice. For Slayer or casual content, Vampyrism can also be nice if it lets you save prayer by not using Soul Split. Although personally, I find it really annoying that it requires ancient spellbook, especially since I like to manually high alt drops at places like Rune Dragons, and the normal spellbook doesn't even have spellbook swap. In general, the more sources of damage that can be dodged, the more value you'll get from darkness. That's something I really felt at Zuk. At the end of the day, Vampyrism is technically more consistent, while Darkness is more RNG based. In my experience, their overall performance is pretty similar. It really comes down to what you need more in the moment: consistent healing or the chance to avoid big hits entirely. Neither one overwhelmingly dominates the other. For AFK combat, I would definitely favor Vampyrism because usually the healing is what you need to AFK. Looking ahead, for content like solo hard mode Virago on Vitalis rotation, I'll definitely be experimenting more to see which one feels better. What used to be something that you could stack together has now become another decision to make, which is a nightmarish dilemma, especially for AFK content where Darkness and Vampyrism once stacked together. This is definitely an interesting decision by Jagex. That's my perspective on it. What do you think? Thank you for watching, subscribe if you enjoyed, and bye bye.